Hello and welcome to Voices of Parenting podcast. I am so glad you're here. My name is Mussy Diskin. I am an advanced nurtured heart approach trainer. I am a parenting coach. I am also an inner wealth coach, which means that I help people rediscover and connect to the people that they truly were all along, but may have gotten forgotten along the way. So to find out more about me and what I offer, you can check out mussydiskin.com. I would love to connect and I would love to hear your feedback. Reach out to energizinghearts@gmail.com. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. A special thank you to our sponsors this week, Rabbi Zalman and Deborah Levin from Palo Alto, California, celebrating the incredible after-school and preschool programs that they have fully enriched with Nurtured Heart Approach. So much greatness going on there. We honor the children. We honor you and your great work. And thank you for sponsoring our podcast this week and for helping this podcast continue. And for all those listening, if you have anything you'd like to celebrate, a special date, a special person, this podcast might be a nice opportunity for you to sponsor and get a shout out. Reach out at energizinghearts@gmail.com for sponsorship opportunities. Hello, everybody. I am here today with Randi Goldfarb, who I met in the Nurtured Heart world. And I'm so glad I did because her passion and excitement about Nurtured Heart is right up my alley. Randi just went to a CTI to become a certified trainer and sent me all these excited messages. And I was like, my girl, I love it. So Randi, you were just saying before we got on that you've been a social worker, right? For 30 plus years, and that Nurtured Heart was kind of always calling your name, but that for whatever reason you hadn't pursued it. And I want to know, what is that spark? What is that light? What is it that calls your name? And what is it that got you in now?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, I think, and something that I've been exploring a lot since I completed the CTI. And that's why I had to reach out to you, because as I mentioned to you, you were kind of like the last straw in a good way. And that's one of the things I love about Nurtured Heart. It's finding all these metaphors that we typically think of one way before. And now you're like, wait a second, it has a whole other meaning. So that was really the last straw. And I said, I have to take CTI. I need to really understand this. So I dabbled in Nurtured Heart a little bit in the last year before taking CTI. But actually, my story started, I'm going to say, over 15 years ago. I was pulled to Nurtured Heart. I was working in radiation oncology. That's what it was called back then, as a social worker. That's kind of where I initially went. I wanted to work with kids. I wanted to connect with people. That's why I became a social worker. And something was always pulling me that the work I was doing, focusing on all the challenges, was something I just couldn't connect with it. And I ended up developing this intense need to stay away from negativity, because I constantly felt like negativity was bringing everyone down, including me. And I was like, I can't be around negativity. I need to be around positivity. And that was kind of how I think I was always pulled as a social worker in all the different areas. Now I work in early childhood with young families and with teachers. And I've always been pulled to finding what's working and what's right, and how do we find the strengths and greatness. And I didn't really know that was a thing really back then. So when I first took it, I was intrigued, and I was like, I like this Nurtured Heart thing, but I don't know. And the stand 3 and the stands, and it was overwhelming to me at the time. The more I started to hear about it, and then when I listened to some of your podcasts, I was hooked. Because your energy felt like, I was like, that's what I'm talking about. Because I loved how much there was so much, and this is something I gained on CT. There's so much capacity to utilize the negativity in such a great way that you don't need to be afraid of it. And I think that was something that was sort of sealed the deal for me.
Tell me more about that. Why was that important to you, or what does that even mean?
Right. So I guess I've always kind of been a joyful person, trying to find the good, appreciating nature. And I've always had a big energy about that. I often felt it wasn't understood. And it was kind of, it's sort of, I also think like sometimes people think Nurtured Heart is sort of this like unicorns and rainbows, and it's all about everything great. And that kind of was, I always was like, no, 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 I want to be in the universe. Like, I want to be in reality, but I want to be like this because there's so much this. So why not? Right. And so I constantly felt like there was a little bit of like pushback for doing that and being that. And can't you see? Why don't you want to see what's going wrong? Why are you only looking for what's good? And I just kept resisting. And I think initially it was because I didn't want to be in this negative space. Now, again, I kind of, in something that recently just sort of like came to me after CTI and after I reached out to you, I was kind of I feel like the wheels were turning and I needed to slow them down a little bit because I was so excited. And I said, I got to get grounded here. And something that with the negativity really struck me. And I was thinking about it when we grieve and when we lose someone. We say that the person is laid to rest and we bury them, which in the Jewish world, we bury people in a cemetery, right? And then we also say that a person's memory should be a blessing and that their soul should be elevated. And all these things were kind of floating for me. And I said, you know something? Isn't that amazing? Like we say the person's memory should be for a blessing. It's not that they're gone and now we say they're finished, their story is over. It doesn't matter anymore. We still want that to be a blessing and we want something to be elevated. And why do we say we lay someone to rest? So I thought about all that negativity in our space that actually maybe what we want to be doing is sort of lay it to rest because it's there to teach us. And the memory of those experiences, of those challenges, of things we think we made a mistake or we could have done better or someone this or whatever it is, if we could say, you know what, it's here, it's part of my experience, but I want to lay it to rest. But I want the memory to be for a blessing because that experience is helping shape me into who I am in this very second. And that actually is something that can elevate the negativity into something that is so nutritious, right? And joyful in a way. And it doesn't sugarcoat the loss per se, right? It's not about that. It's about saying, what can I kind of unearth and uncover from this that needed to be laid to rest because it wasn't serving me well. I think that sort of has really transformed things for me, that there's such blessing in what we experience. And that maybe part of what we want to be able to do is sort of have the memory of those challenges and those things that we might be berating ourselves or feeling frustrated that someone didn't do, right? Which now I've learned and understood I can only control what I do and what I say and what I'm being. And that I feel like that allows something to be for a blessing. And that is, to me, one of the most powerful ways to really kind of move along in this universe, right? Because otherwise I feel like I spend so much time trying to fight the negativity and not be around negative people and not want to look at something negatively because, oh dear, you know, what would happen to smiley me, right? And now I realize, you know what, smiley me is here. And this is what I'm meant to be and who I'm meant to be. And it's just about figuring out how do I kind of be that in every way I can and not be afraid of things that I can't control. And that is so different from any other way that I learned. And even when I go places and I try to point out what's good, what's going well, look at this, this is an amazing moment. It's not always understood. Like, I think there's this need that people have. I want to fix and make it better because I said so, right? Like, I walked into a classroom where it was 2-year-olds, toddlers, and there was this one child I went in specifically for. And I come in and right away the teacher says to me, that one, he's got ants in his pants. You see, he never sits. He's always this, always that. I walk over. Guess what he was doing? Sitting at the table. So I went over to him and I said, hey, buddy, I see you sitting. Look at you. You're like a rock star sitter. You know, your legs are here. Your feet are here. I said, your toes, like everything is where it belongs. How cool. You know how to sit. And he just looks at me in his 2-year-old way and he says, I know, listen, I know sit. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, no. You really are, but someone else has convinced you that you're not. And I said to myself, that's backwards, because those kinds of experiences give people, especially children, the chatter in their own minds of who they are. And that's something I feel like I've learned from you and from watching and all the different people that have gone through Nurtured Heart and even from the CTI. Like, we become a certain way because of what we've heard and what people have said. And then that creates our inner voice. And you know what? That's not always accurate. And I just saw, like, look at this brain of a 2-year-old that is so, can believe anything, to be honest, but couldn't believe me in the moment that he was sitting when he actually was, because everybody else said, no, he doesn't sit. So I feel like that's just kind of this whole gorgeousness of Nurtured Heart. Like, why not see a child for what they're doing in that second that you needed them to do? So he could walk home and say, I sit. I rock star sitter, Imagine we have kids going around like that,
And we do, because we're out there, because you're out there, and because I'm out there, and because all of our listeners are out there. And it's important to hear. I feel like sometimes I want to be in non-nurtured heart places because it's important to remember why we're doing this work. I forget because I'm around me all the time.
Right. So, and I love that you say that, because I'm almost like, can't the whole world be nurtured heart? That would be amazing. But yeah, when you're not in nurtured heart places, I think what I am finding is it sort of forces you to be a bit more of a warrior about it. And maybe not more, but a different kinds of warrior, because I just gave a workshop for teachers, for early childhood educators, and they wanted me to speak about play. And I was like, what am I, like, I'm going to talk about the science of play? I have no idea. So I said, you know what, it's going to have a nurtured heart spin to it, because that's really, at this point, that's the only way that I could see how this is evolving. So I decided to, and I think you would appreciate this, I decided to do a play on rules. And I came up with my own, what does R stand for, ULES? And sort of, so the one thing, and this was like a moment I was just blown away. I was talking about embracing energy, which is a big part of Nurtured Heart, which is something that I have enjoyed really exploring, because it's always been tantrums, negativity. It's like, bad, get that, make those kids stop. We don't want that. We have to teach them, And so what I said to this group of teachers is, I said, I think when it comes to play, and especially early childhood, it's time for us to embrace that energy. And I said, it's something I've learned, like not being afraid of it, but just saying it's energy. It doesn't have a particular charge. And this is the greatness of these kids in the moment, because they are here the fullest of themselves. And I went through a couple of other things about it, and I went along with the rest of and that particular one I had to finish like in 2 seconds, and I wasn't ready to finish. But since I really was like, okay, this is the amount that I was meant to teach. A teacher came over to me later on in the day, and she said, I need to thank you so much. She said, I wasn't in such a great place beforehand. And because I have, the most energetic class I've ever had. The energy is all over the place, and it's constant, where I'm trying to control their energy. And I now am remembering and realizing that that is not my goal. My goal is not to control them. My goal is to control what I'm doing and to find ways to bring out the best of them. And that, I feel like, Musi, has been so empowering to say, no. My job in this world is not to control other people. They have their own greatness to unearth. That's not for me to determine in what manner it needs to come. The only one that I could do that for is me. And I feel like that's been so much more empowering, and it's made such an impact on how I go about just conveying things and sharing things. Like, I stop and think before, because I want it to land in a way that's going to be impactful, and someone's going to, see that there's something amazing in front of them. Because I said, high energy in a classroom, I said, like, really, what's so bad about that? I said, yes, we have to make sure kids are safe and all those things. But why are we so against energy? Yes, okay, we're going to teach them how to kind of dial down at times when dialing down is important. And that can be done in a way that doesn't discount the high energy that they bring. That's where I think the change can happen, right? And realizing that we're so lucky to have, like, I feel like I'm lucky to have stumbled upon this, because like I said, I had a few times of trying Nurtured Heart, and each time I was like, no, what's something about it? It's like pulling me, because I love seeing the good.
Randi, you said so many things, so much. I had so many things I wanted to talk about, and then I was like, we're on to the next, and I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And we're actually almost at closing, believe
Oh
it or not,
no.
which is fantastic. Yeah, I think my reflection would be just like on the irony of your story of how, and I think the essential point that really brought you into Nurtured Heart, that nuance about negativity versus like this sort of maybe what the world would call toxic positivity, or this like just like whitewashing, where the reason why you didn't want to dabble too much with Nurtured Heart was because you thought it was unicorns and rainbows, and not wanting to just like be in this like in denial place of everything's fine, so I'm not going to do this Nurtured Heart, when the way that the world gives you tools to be in a positive space is by actually minimizing and ignoring negativity in a way that is in denial and is unicorns and rainbows. Is the only way you could be, is to convince yourself that everything's beautiful and there's nothing wrong, or else the negativity matters too much. And all of a sudden, Nurtured Heart is exactly the answer to what made you not want to do Nurtured Heart, which is that no, it's not about needing everything to be perfect in order to see the greatness. I love the first line that Howard says in the video he gives us when we're doing the shorter trainings, when he introduces Nurtured Heart, and he says it's not about the good kids or the bad kids, it's about the great kids. And I think that good, bad versus great applies to everything. It's not about life being good or bad. It will be good and bad. There will always be good and bad. And we get to see what's great, and we get to be great in response, in conjunction, in midst of the good and the bad. Like, it's not, we don't need to resist anything. We don't need to be in denial. We don't need to convince ourselves the good doesn't matter in order to address the bad. And we don't need to convince ourselves that the bad doesn't matter in order to address the good. It's all true. It's a truth. It's not really a positive approach. It's a truthful approach. And I love that.
Yes. And that's exactly right. And I think that's sort of what shifted for me the more I learned about it, because I was thinking it's a positive approach, which, again, in the world today, it sounds like just another one of these things. Do this and everything will be great and you'll be fixed, and that's what a lot of times people call me in to do, like, come into this classroom, fix what's going on. And it's kind of like, you know what, there's so much greatness going on, there's just a lot to kind of be with. Let's just have it all. And I love, you're absolutely right. That's what is so compelling. It's about kind of having it all be this sort of magnificence of greatness, kind of all in one pot. And you just have to kind of find all the little sparkles and glimmers and whatever. And when the other stuff comes, then you know what it is you need to do, because you have your stands and you have your clarity. So,
and that situation really in the classroom, it's like a not accidentally missing out on everything that's available to us because we're so busy fixing something that maybe doesn't even need to be fixed, or maybe we'll fix on its own if we build ourselves and each other up. I want, Randi, for people to know how to find you if you're available, whether it's professionally or just as a fellow Nurtured Hearter in the world. What can they expect from you? And is there any way that they can find more from you or reach you?
Yeah, so my email address is proactiveconnections@gmail.com. And I do have a website with the same name, Proactive Connections. I need to update it because it doesn't reflect this sort of evolution of me, but it's still a way to find out about what I do. And I love to work with teachers of young children, particularly, and parents, also coaching kind of in this same, line of thinking. And just, I love being around other Nurtured Heart people, because it just sort of builds your own inner wealth when you can learn from other people. And that to me is like a joy to be able to try to do and to get to do from other people. It's like an amazing thing. So
yeah, so fantastic. All right, everybody. Well, hopefully we'll get another recording in for you all to enjoy some more of Randi. But for now, have a good day.
Thank you.
Hey, wait, don't go yet. Take a minute to find the beautiful quality that you have, that you appreciate about yourself.